if you have your personal study guide on page 46, there is the very first paragraph. And if you don't have it, I'll just read it. How about I'll just do that? And then there's some questions underneath that I'd like for you to respond to. I think this is a paragraph. People generally fall into two categories. Those who read and follow the instructions, and those who think they can figure it out as they go along.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Those who fall into this latter category may do so because of heightened self-confidence, impatience, or a history of past successes. Sometimes, though, at the end of the project, those in the second category may be left with extra unused parts or an end product that doesn't quite look like it was supposed to.
I thought that was lanyard.
Huh?
Lanyard, the extra parts that were left over for if you needed them later on.
Okay. All right. So here's it has these three questions. First question is, do you find yourself in category 1 or 2? How many category 1s do we have? Okay. Okay. Wow. This is not the class to ask to assemble something then, is it? Well, maybe not. And the rest of you are category 2?
Yeah.
Just take off and, yeah, this is simple. Yeah. How many of you shop at IKEA?
A what?
IKEA. Yeah.
All the extra parts are given if you've got IKEA furniture.
Is that right? Well, there are no words with their instructions. It's just pictures. Yeah, that is rough for a guy like me. What kind of task is it most important to follow instructions all the way to the end?
The Bible.
Oh, there you go. Thank you for going spiritual on us
Oh,
right at the
sorry.
very beginning.
Sorry.
We are behind time. I guess I need to move it up. Yeah, David?
The reason there's no words, it's a Korean company. The Korean would
I thought IKEA was Swedish.
Yeah.
Swedish.
Oh, I see.
Swedish and Korean, they sound a lot alike, don't they? Huh? Okay, all right. Yeah, I think you're all right. It is a foreign country.
My wife said it.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right.
So, when you come to this text, the context of this passage, chapter 15 to chapter 22, illustrates the lesson summary statement. God calls His people to trust Him. Notice, in every situation. That's where the complications come in. Yes, I understand trusting God, but I'm not sure about this situation. This situation's a little unique, don't you think, Lord? But the lesson is about God calls His people to trust Him in every situation. In chapter 15, it gives us various offerings, and the purpose of the offerings are to show us how we can be in proper relationship with God and with humanity. That's chapter 15. Chapter 16 and 17 is about God's priests, and that if God's priests will stay in relationship with God, in serving Him and serving the people, then the people will prosper and God will bless. Which I think you can take that passage and make an application if you want to know the reason why our nation is in such a mess that it's in today. It starts with preachers instead of politicians. But there's a group in the people that oppose Moses or Aaron as a priest. They're the Kohathites. And so there's this conflict, and they rebel, and what they're really doing is rejecting God's authority, and there's terrible judgment that come upon the Kohathites. That is, they didn't trust Him in every situation. Chapters 18 and 19 are several directions about the Levites. They are guardians of the holiness of the sanctuary, how they're to be provided for. It closes with the means of being cleansed when you have, one example it uses when you've touched a dead body, how you become back in relationship with God. And then you have chapter 20. Chapter 20, which is where our text is found, Chapter 20 begins with the death of Miriam. That's verse 1. That's not a part of our Sunday school text. And then the chapter ends with Aaron's death, which is not a part of our Sunday school text. But in between, you have this detailed description of Moses and Aaron's disobedience of God and God's command for them to speak to a rock to bring forth water for the Israelites. Now, what's implicit in that narrative is the 40 years is coming to an end, and the children of Israel have arrived back here. They've arrived back here for the second time to go into the promised land. And they are complaining. They're complaining that they don't have enough water. And the sad thing is just like the first generation was a generation that didn't trust God, and they experienced the tragedy of God's judgment on it, this second generation seems to be an apple that hasn't fallen far from the tree. They're a bunch of grumblers and complainers, and they won't trust God. And so that's kind of the context in which this happens, in which Moses and Aaron experienced the judgment of God. And what's happening there is here is God's finest, Moses. And even God's finest fails to trust God and experiences the judgment of God. We are a people that must have the grace of God, the mercy of God. So we begin with the problem in chapter 20, verse 2 through 5. And I want to read through this, and I want us to look at the problem. The point says the problem, so I want to look at it physically. What's the problem physically and geographically? And what's the problem emotionally and relationally? And then we'll look at it spiritually as well. So I'm going to read this text, and I want you to keep those three things in mind that help us to understand what the problem is. Okay? Verse 2, there was no water for the community. And one of the things you're going to see in this text, all the way through the Sunday school text, is the word water. It's repeated over and over. It provides the context for the challenge that people are facing. There was no water for the community, so they assembled against Moses and Aaron. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "If only we had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord. Why have you brought the Lord's assembly into this wilderness for us and our livestock to die here?" See, don't they sound just like mom and dad? Why have you led us from Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It's not a place of grain, figs, vines, and pomegranates, and there's no water to drink. So what's the problem geographically?
Desert.
It's desert, yeah. But they lived in the desert. No water. They had no water. Yeah. They're at Kadesh. They've gone back to where this all began, this 40 years of wilderness. Kadesh was a place that was an oasis. It was known for its many springs. We don't know why it's dry. Maybe there's been a drought and the springs aren't as abundant as they were in the times past. Maybe there's so many of them that there's just not enough water to sustain such a large group of people. We just don't know what. Yes, sir. Yes, Pratap.
Egypt, the fact is, it never rains in Egypt.
Ah,
That's why. And because of the Nile, they survive.
they survive. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, out of Nile, no water.
Yeah.
Except in that rock.
Except for that rock. That's right. Yeah. They've had water they've had to have water for 40 years, but whatever happens, they arrive at Kadesh and there's just no water for whatever the reasons are. The springs, the oasis is either insufficient or it's dried up. But they're in trouble. And you can imagine the kind of concerns that would create for you if you couldn't get water for your family or for your flocks. Anything else physically or geographically? Okay. Let's talk about emotionally or relationally. What's the problem? What's the problem here with the people? Emotion.
Ungrateful?
They're ungrateful, that's right.
They were quarreling. They were quarreling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Impatient.
Do what, Pratam?
Impatient with God. Impatient.
Impatient, yes. Yes. This word against in verse 2 where it says, so they assembled against Moses and Aaron, that word reflects anger and hostility. They were mad at Moses. They were blaming him for it. Brad mentioned the word quarreling, which is found in this text. And that word, when it's talking about physical action, it's talking about people fighting and wrestling with one another. But here it's talking about verbal and emotional, but they're fighting and they're struggling with Moses. Yes, Cindy?
Well, on the same token, they never took accountability. It's always, why have you led us here? They never took accountability that had anything to do with them.
That's right, yeah. Yes, they said, notice, why have you brought the Lord's assembly into this wilderness for us? Well, the answer to that is because of you.
He didn't stop and ask directions.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, they were accusing Moses and Aaron for not fulfilling their responsibilities
Right.
to the community. Like, you guys are not taking care of us.
Yeah,
That's what they were trying to say.
yeah. Notice their grumbling results in exaggeration and blame. Let's see. If only we had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord. If only we had died at the beginning instead of being able to survive.
So
I mean, you
people
talk
have
about-
blamed other people for their problems even back then. It's not something new that
That's
just started.
absolutely right. Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Yes,
Well, that's
we
the
did
I
not
wish I were
invent
dead.
that.
I wish I were dead.
I wish I were dead. Yeah,
Mhm.
imagine that. Wish I were dead. And then, what about spiritually? What's going on spiritually? Ungrateful. Yep.
Losing any kind of faith they had at all.
Yep. They were rebellious. He says. Well, we'll see that word rebellion come up in just a little bit. They called the place where God had brought them as evil. See, where is that in there? The people quarreled.
Why have you led us up from Egypt to bring
Yes,
us
verse
to
5.
the evil place? Yep.
Why have you led us from Egypt to bring us to this evil place? Imagine that. Now, there can be situations in our life in which it's not pleasant, it's not good, and I wouldn't call it good. But if God has led you to a place, I don't know that you call it evil. Evil doesn't mean simply, it doesn't always have a moral context to it. It can also mean a place of calamity or distress. So this is a place of
Well,
evil.
they had forgotten that they were in the desert because of their sin.
Yes?
Because they were sinful, so God put them in the desert,
Yeah.
in the wilderness.
What had they also forgotten?
The cloud and the pillar of fire.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, they'd forgotten the God's provision there.
But have they experienced that? Because most of the generation is gone except for a few, right?
Yes, but the 40 years that they were in the desert, as that first generation died off and as that second generation grew up, they still had the cloud and the fire that guided them. It told them when to camp and when not to camp.
Okay.
So they've had 40 years of that cloud hovering over them and that fire as well.
Well, it sounds like one generation did not educate the
It
following
does sound like that,
generation.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, teach
For,
the kids.
yeah, what else have they had for 40 years? A cloud and fire? Yes, sir?
I just wanna throw in, while we talk about this, let's think of ourselves.
No, David.
Say the power goes out at your house, or the
Blame the preacher.
We'll blame somebody.
Yeah.
And we'll be grumbling and complaining, just
They're
like.
probably worse than those people.
Yeah, think about that. That's a good point for talk. We're on this side of the cross.
See
Yeah.
how you act.
Yeah,
We'll see where it goes.
yeah. 40 years they've had enough water. 40 years they've had enough food. 40 years they've had enough clothing. 40 years they've been protected. We'll see about the what they say about the land in just a moment. 40 years. And they get here and they said, there's no water. You brought us out here to die. It's like, how in the world is that possible?
Moses must have been a patient man.
Huh?
They thought of themselves as the Lord's assembly.
The Lord's,
Should be taken care of.
they should be, they're privileged.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like our teenagers when they start aging out. Mom and dad stops providing everything. You have to provide for themselves. How could you?
Yeah.
Moses must have been patient because I'd have been like, you don't like it? Get on back where you came from.
Yeah, well-
Go on.
That's the way Moses has been. We'll see this time he doesn't show up. Now, I wanna contrast them with some other Bible heroes. And I want you to tell me, what's the difference? Let's take Joseph. Joseph was rejected by his family. His brothers hated his guts to the point that they were actually going to kill him. And another brother intervened and said, let's just make some money off of him, sell him into slavery. That's your brothers. He gets into Egypt, you know the story. He's falsely accused by Potiphar's wife. Nobody comes to his defense. He goes to prison. In prison, he has the opportunity to help the baker, the cupbearer. And the man says, I'll remember you when I get out of prison. And the man completely forgot about Joseph for 2 years. So he's been rejected, neglected, suspected. That's enough to make anybody depressed, you know. So that's Joseph. But the thing about Joseph, when you read his story, you never see any of that in him. You never see any wavering of faith. You never see any anger towards God. Every impression of Joseph is he just keeps believing the dream that God gave him when he was a boy. He didn't know how it was going to happen. I mean, it's just an incredible story. A second character is Daniel. Daniel does nothing but what's right, and he gets punished for it. And you know the story. They passed some people who hated him because he was a politician. He was a politician. Imagine this. They investigated his life, and they couldn't find any wrongdoing. Where could we find some guys like that or gals like that? Wow. In fact, they said the only thing that we could really nail this guy with is his devotion to his God. And so that's what they do. They cook up the story about you can only pray to this one God that represented the king, and Daniel doesn't do that. And so what's the result? Daniel gets thrown into a lion's den. I pretty much know the outcome of that one, you know. And then take Job. Job loses everything. I mean, everything. Everything but his faith in God. And even that gets to be kind of shaky sometimes, because he does challenge God until God shows up, and then he goes silent. But Job, God blesses Job, doubles his wealth, and the number of children that he lost, he has the same number of children again. Someone said that was God's judgment on Miss Job.
Yes. Pregnant for how long?
Yeah, really, yeah. All her life, I guess. So, and then you come to the New Testament, you got Paul and Silas. Paul and Silas are doing good there. They're preaching the gospel. Paul gets wearisome of this demon-possessed girl who follows behind him and says, these are the servants of the Most High God. Now that's a good testimony unless it's coming from the devil. Mm-hmm. And so Paul finally gets sick of it, casts the demon out of her. The people who had been abusing her for that they have him beaten and thrown into prison. And you remember what Paul and Silas did? They were singing hymns. So here's my question. We've got the children of Israel here. We've described them. And then now I've got Joseph and Daniel and Job and Paul and Silas, and I've described them. That is completely different responses to problems. How do you explain that? What's the difference between these two people?
Their attitude.
Okay, attitude. Can you enlarge on that?
Well,
I mean, is it positive thinking?
no, well, it's their faith in God, and instead of looking at the negative, they're looking at the positive. They're concentrating on what His promises are instead of what their circumstances are
Okay.
revealing to them. And their self-talk is much better than the previous.
And could it be too that Moses is just surrounded by these people 24/7?
That's why I think that Moses is taking on the frustration of all the people,
Yes.
and.
There's no way to get away
He
from
could
them.
focus on God
Oh,
and just took on the frustration of the people and finally had enough of it.
okay.
I think Carol had it when she said faith is, if they kept trusting.
Okay. So you're telling me that the difference between the people of Israel in the wilderness and Joseph is their attitude. So we're talking about something inward, not something outward. So we're talking about what's going on in the inside of them, okay? And what's going on inside of Joseph and Daniel and Paul and Silas and Job is they continue to trust God
And,
in every situation.
and also I would say Moses and Aaron, they were having to take on the faith of everyone around them, where Daniel and all them, it was their inner faith. It was their faith between them and just God. With Moses and Aaron, they were struggling with all those Israelites around them that were struggling with faith.
Okay.
So it wasn't as personalized. They were having to get everyone to, come on, have faith, what's wrong? You know, where Daniel and all them, it was their faith between them and God only. that
Well,
they
that's it.
struggled with.
That's interesting, Cindy. Because the reason I gave those examples is because the environment of those 4 examples is bad. I mean, Joseph, as I mentioned, his family hates him. He's had injustice done to him. He's forgotten and neglected and left in prison. That's a pretty bad circumstances. That Daniel, he lives in an absolutely secular, or well, not secular, pagan environment that is so opposed to his God, they want to kill him for it or use it to kill him, and so forth. So I understand what you're saying. I think I understand what you're saying, that Moses and Aaron is taking on the burden of those people and their lack of faith. And we recognize that's wrong. But what I'm trying to say is both situations, the situation is bad. It's bad. But the people of Israel respond poorly, and these people respond rightly.
Yeah.
And I'm asking, what explains the difference? Because you and I are, I'm going to use David as our example of coming back to making it apply, is we all experience bad situations, whether it's a health crisis or a family or marriage crisis or a financial crisis. We all, at one time or another, have experienced the wilderness. And some people just collapse in their faith, and others don't. And I find that fascinating.
Victim mentality,
Huh?
victim mentality.
That would go back to this, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
What's happening on the inside. Yeah. I think we're onto something here. When you go back and you look at the heroes, they pray. Daniel's praying. Job keeps talking to God. Paul and Silas are praising God and offering prayers, which that's another way of saying they stayed connected to God.
Gratitude.
They didn't let the situation cause them to say, well, if you're gonna treat me this way, I'm just not gonna have anything to do with it. They stayed connected. Yes, Sunshine?
I was thinking of the scripture, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Yeah,
So the Christian that lives in the unseen world has faith in God. But the Christians that live in the seen world, they're still Christians, but all they see is what they see,
okay,
is a lack of faith, and that's the difference. Joseph lived in the unseen world. Even though he lived in Egypt, he lived, suspected in prison until he was given the authority that God
Right.
sent him for. He still lived in the unseen world.
yeah,
So his heart, his emotions, everything were in the unseen world,
and the uns-
even though he had to live in
Yeah.
the seen world.
Keith?
I think it's just kind of trust no matter what. So giving God the benefit of the doubt that even though you put me in this horrible situation, I'm going to trust in you. I mean, that is a verse, though he slay me, yet I will trust in him.
Yes. That's
It's that
Job.
kind of attitude.
Yeah, that's Job, yeah. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, blessed be the name of the Lord. Yeah. That's,
They did let
What-
fear and
what-
doubt creep in.
huh?
They did let fear and doubt creep in and mess
Yes.
up their attitude.
Yes.
Because they bought into it. and
They-
choose
Yeah,
to
they, yes, it will help them to push away the fear and the doubt, the trust. Yes, Pratap?
What would you do if your basic needs are not met in life? And the others didn't have that problem. They had food and,
Right.
So probably, that's where the frustration
Yeah.
comes.
That's a good point. They're certainly, like I said, it's, whatever the case, there is some truth to this. There's no water. And so what they do is they grumble and they complain, and what I'm saying the others did is they somehow stayed connected. And to go back to what Sunshine was saying, in terms of the people of faith recognize there's an unseen reality. It's just as real as this reality, but we just don't have the capacity to see it. And what is in that? Well, it's God. And so when you read those stories, they trust God's promises. That's Joseph. They trust God's character. That's what Job comes to understand. And they worship. They stayed connected to the Word.
So it sounds like the one group complained and moaned and groaned, and the other group prayed, stayed in the prayer, stayed in the Word. And so the group that Moses had, they could have prayed and everything too, but they chose to complain and whine and oh, poor me.
Yes. You know what's interesting about this story? This is not the first time they've been without water.
Exodus.
It's the second time. And the first time was in Exodus 17, and they come to Moses. This is the first generation, and they said, we don't have any water. And so God tells Moses to go to this rock, and he says, I'm going to have my glory come before this rock, and then I want you to strike the rock. Now, what's being conveyed there is the one who's going to bear the suffering is the Lord.
Yes. Yes.
Because he strikes the rock through the glory of God. So God is their servant, if you could imagine that. He's going to be their servant, and he's going to provide that. And that's what I'm saying is if these were people who trusted God, they would have gone to Moses and they would have said, hey, we're out of water. Would you ask the Lord to give us water? I think that's what Job would have done, or Joseph, or Daniel, or Paul and Silas. I think that's what their situations were different, but they were going to God and saying, I don't understand it, but I do trust you because I know what kind of God you are. I know your promises to us. See, they were people who'd been promised this land. The way that God says it, he's already given it to them. And so they simply won't trust. That's the problem. They won't trust him. Yes, David?
The only person we could add to that list is Jesus, he was in the wilderness for 40 days, 40 nights. He's been tempted every way we have, and he's our example. I mean, they're great examples, but maybe they were looking at Jesus as their example.
Right. Well, in the Gospels, they tell us about Jesus being in the wilderness 40 days, where he fasted and prayed. And that is a reflection of the children of Israel in their 40 years in the wilderness. And what the Gospels are telling us is where Israel failed to trust God, Jesus succeeded. Isn't it interesting what he offers them? What the devil offers you? He offers Jesus bread, and he's fasted for 40 days. And he says, man doesn't live by bread alone. He quotes out of all three quotes of the way he responds to the devil is he quotes scripture to him, and all three passages are found in the book of Deuteronomy. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. That was the message given to the children of Israel just before they went into the promised land. So Jesus is an example of someone who trusted the Father. Now notice the plan in verses 6 through 8. Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the doorway of the tent of meeting. That's most likely the tabernacle. The tabernacle is referred to as that way as well. The people are threatening. They're angry. Moses and Aaron may even feel a little bit of danger, and so they get away from the people to intercede. And that is a good model for leaders when people grumble. And I know you all have never experienced that with people grumbling, but a good practice for leaders is when people grumble is to separate yourself for a bit and go before the Lord. Let him gain possession of your spirit before you speak, before you act, or you will probably speak and act in ways that you'll regret later. So they do a good thing. They get away from the people and they go to the Lord. They fell face down. That is the right posture. That's not the typical posture for prayer. I've mentioned to you the typical posture for prayer for Jews was to stand with their hands like this towards God, as if to say, my hands are empty, Father, meaning I don't have the abilities and I need you to fill my hands with your power and your ability. And their face might be uplifted or their face might be down, depending. But the typical way, and then they prayed out loud. They didn't pray silent prayers, typically. So, but occasionally they got on their face, and that's the right sign of humility before the Lord. Notice this. Think about this. So they leave the people, they get on their face, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. Now just think about that for just a moment. What must that have been like? Has that ever happened? If it happened to you, please tell us about it. The glory. He's saying a manifestation of the presence of God. There was something that was visible to their eyes. The word glory means the presence of God making himself known. And the word glory has about it the idea of heaviness. And so there was a significance and importance about this. What do you think they experienced being in the glory of God?
I would have been in awe.
It would have been breathless. We're talking about the power of God. Somehow or another, they experienced the power of the omnipotent God.
Well, it could be fearful also.
Absolutely, it'd be fearful.
He has got so much ability.
Yes.
You even thinking the wrong God. You don't have to verbalize it.
Yes. And Proverbs tells us that fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. You ought to take this God serious. This is His power, His holiness. When you read the scriptures and sinners become aware that they're in the presence of the holy God, you know what they do? You know what their first reaction is? They hit the ground. They do this. They get on their face. I mean, when the three disciples are with Jesus on Mount Transfiguration, only Peter's dumb enough to say something.
That
You
would
know,
be me.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to build in our minds. They have had this unbelievable, awesome encounter with the living God. You have to keep that in mind about what's going to happen next. Don't just run past that. The glory of the Lord appeared to them.
Well, with Paul is the same way. You know, he thought he was somebody, which he was. But then when the light came, all of a sudden he was nobody.
That's right. Yes, on the Damascus Road you were referring? Yeah. Yes. Yes, first thing he said is, who are you, Lord? Didn't he? Yeah. And he knew whoever it was the Lord that did
It
that.
also says, though, that they fell down on their face, and then the presence of the Lord came. So they had experienced this, and they anticipated, and they were seeking after His glory.
Yeah, he appeared to them. They were humble. They humbled themselves.
But they went seeking, that's why they were there.
Yeah.
They wanted to experience that, and because of,
That is so much
he
more
honored,
awesome.
he honored well.
And also, they are not supposed to see God, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't see God. He'll kill you.
Yeah,
He'll kill you. Yeah.
Probably that's the reason they.
Yeah. Moses, Moses asked one time if he could see God's face. God said, no, that'll kill you, Moses. He said, well, I'll tell you what you do. Get over here in this crevice in the rock. I'll put my hand over you, and then I'll pass by. And just as the hinder part of His glory is about to fade, it's like the last part of the light before it goes dark. It's that kind of an idea. He said, I'll remove my hand. And when He did, it made Moses' face glow. Yeah. So I'm wanting us to see the context of what's going to come to pass. Verse 7. The Lord spoke to Moses. And just that right there, just that right there, would make tingles go up and down your spine, wouldn't it? I mean, the Lord spoke to Moses, and here's what He said, verse 8. Take the staff, that's number one, and that staff represents the authority of God, and assemble the community, and the word assemble there's a religious word, a religious word for time of worship. Take the staff and assemble the community. So that's the second thing. You and your brother Aaron are to speak to the rock while they watch, and it will yield its water. That's the third thing. Are you confused about this? It's pretty clear, right? I mean, we're Southern Baptist and we get it, right? Take the staff, get the people together, talk to the rock, and water is going to come out of that rock. Okay. So, you will bring out water for them from the rock and provide drink for the community and their livestock. So far so good. Why is on the face of it, the plan is to bring water, right? But if you step back from the text, when you step back from the text, what's the bigger work that God's wanting to do in God's people?
Develop trust.
Yes. In every situation, right? So now they don't know this. You and I know it because we've read the book of Joshua, and Joshua's not been written yet. What are the things that are going to happen in the promised land in which they need to be able to trust God in every situation. It's gonna be like not having water. Conquer, yes. Give me some examples of them having to conquer. Jericho, yes. Now, what's the strategy for conquering Jericho? Now, archaeologists have discovered that the base of these cities' walls would be sometimes 10 feet or more, and they could be as high as 20 to 30 feet. And you have a bow and arrow. Okay? And the way that they defeated cities is they didn't attack the city like in Hollywood. They just starved them to death. They just camped outside, didn't let the food in, and they just starved them to death till they capitulate. Because they didn't have the means of climbing the wall successfully or breaking it down. So you get into Jericho, so you cross the Jordan, and you get there beside Jericho. What's the strategy? I know, but what's the military strategy God gives Joshua on
Cut the water off. No water goes into the.
Yeah, but he didn't tell. That's not what he told Joshua.
They walk around silent.
Yeah. There's a military strategy. Joshua. Here's what I want you to do. General Joshua, go to the troops and get the preachers involved in this. That's where the silent miracle comes in, you know. I want you to go walk around it. Now, Jericho was a city that would cover about this 5 acres that we have right here in the land. So you could imagine, can you imagine, here's 1 million people, let's say 600,000 soldiers, and they walk around your city one time, and then they go back to camp. I don't know how long it'd take 600,000 people to walk around this property. Can you, they don't say a word. And they do that for 6 days. I'm telling you, you'd be getting them weebie-jeebies on the inside, wouldn't you? I mean, at least I think I would. And then the 7th day, okay, have them walk around it 7 times. Huh? Yeah, and then at the signal, everybody shout and blow the horn. And the walls are going to fall down. Do what? The walls are going to fall down. You trust him? In every situation? You see, that's what he's trying to do. The Jordan River begins in the Sea of Galilee. It flows into the Dead Sea 1,300 feet lower. No, it's actually more than that. I think the Sea of Galilee is about 1,000 feet. Sea of Galilee is 1,000 feet elevation, and the Dead Sea is 1,300 feet below sea level. It's the lowest place on earth. And the water meanders down the Jordan River for about 100 miles, and sometimes it's really swampy area. But in flood season, that 100 miles becomes 60 miles one stream, and it flows at such a force that they have recorded it rolling boulders down the river. Guess what time of year they cross the Jordan River? Flood season. And again, the instructions to Joshua is have the preachers take the Ark of the Covenant and have them step into the water. You know, I want my people to be led by faith. And that's what happens. And they step in when it gets about ankle deep. The water starts pushing to the side. And 1.5 million or more people come across the Jordan River. From Adam, which is a town way up the river, to Jericho. This big, huge section they come across. You gotta trust God to do that. Step out in a flood. Some of the strongest of Israel's warriors couldn't have swum that river at that time. They would have drowned. So you take your family, you pack them up. We're going across the Jordan at flood time. There's another story about the sun standing still. In order to finish the job, they needed more sunlight. And Joshua says, God, we need more sunlight. Who would even think to pray this? Would you make the sun stand still? Who would even think that would be a possibility? So my point is what you have is you have this great work of God taking place at this event that is preparing them for the promised land. And they don't see the plan. I gotta move on. The third point is the result, verses 9 to 13. So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him to. Now, so far, so good. And that last phrase, just as he commanded, when you read the book of Exodus and Moses and God's relationship, that phrase is repeated over and over and over. Moses was a man of obedience. When God said it, he obeyed. So he's doing good. So far, so good. Verse 10. Moses and Aaron summoned the assembly in front of the rock. So far, so good, right? This is two of the three things God told Moses to do. Now here's where we mess up. Moses said to, what's supposed to be there?
The rock.
The rock. No. Moses said to them, listen, you rebels. The word rebel there talks about somebody who is just obstinate and resistant to authority. And so he nailed him. He didn't lie when he called him that.
You can tell he was mad.
He's mad. Yes. Yes. You should read this with an angry voice.
Yes.
Listen, you rebels. Now notice this. Must we bring water out of this rock for you? The word bring there is an accusative, which means, do we have to deliver you again? Now, who's this we business? You know?
It's not about it.
Then Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his staff. Guess what should have happened after that?
Death and destruction.
Nothing. Nothing. Yeah. So it says he did that, and this is what did happen, so that abundant water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. Now, people who have far more time on their hands than I do, and are way smarter than me, have estimated how much water it would take to satisfy the needs of a people that numbered at least 1.5 million or more, plus livestock. It keeps adding that in there, livestock. And they say that it would have required 5,000 gallons a minute. So our vacation Bible school story, or our Sunday school story when we were children, where we had the little picture up there, or maybe our Velt. I love the Velt. Is that right? Felt, not Velt. Yeah, Felt story, where it has a little stream. No. This is a fire hydrant that's out there providing the money. I mean, can you imagine that? Verse 12.
And
Yep.
the point is, though, even though Moses struck the rock and didn't speak the rock water, God forgave him. He was forgiven by having the abundant water that come out of that rock. Like you say, theoretically, God shouldn't have provided water at all, but he was forgiven by giving the water to come out of that rock.
I would say, Brad, that.
That's what I see it.
Oh, okay. I would say that it was not so much an act of forgiveness as it was an act of grace.
Yes.
God, because he's going to hold Moses. Now he's going to judge Moses in a little bit, verse 12. But I think what it testifies, Brad, is it shows us how gracious and merciful. Moses didn't deserve. What Moses should have happened is exposed for his arrogance, and the people should have suffered for their lack of faith. But all throughout this story, what you see is a God who's gracious, even with Moses in his judgment. So this is what happens next in verse 12. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me to demonstrate my holiness in the sight of Israel, you will not bring this assembly into the land I have given them. These are the waters of Meribah. Meribah means quarreling, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and he demonstrated his holiness to them. So sometimes we look at this and we go, wow, that seems pretty harsh. I mean, he's been a consistent witness for the Lord, and he's put up with all this from these people. Man, that seems like it's awfully harsh. You can't go into the promised land. That was why God called him in the first place. Take him to the promised land. So what's happening here? What is in this? Because you did not trust me. So all of those things we wrote up here about God's character and God's promise and his power, all of those things, he's saying, you didn't believe it. You did not believe that, and you demonstrated that. You showed the Israelites that you don't believe that. And the thing that was so offending is he diminished God's holiness. What's going on here? What is it? When Moses did this, God said, you're not going into the promised land. What's going on?
He could have just not gave them any water and had all them people turn on Moses.
He could have done that, yes.
They
But he's a
always-
gracious God.
They always looked for Moses for their needs. They always went to Aaron and Moses. They always went to Aaron and Moses. God said, talk to them so they can see that I am providing this, not Moses and Aaron.
Yeah.
And so when he struck the rock, he made a big theatrical thing about, this is what I'm gonna do to this rock and bring forth water, when it was not. And it was God's opportunity to strengthen the people's faith in him and not Moses.
Absolutely. Here, you nailed it, Larry.
The scripture says, man's anger does not bring about righteous thought.
Right.
And God desires.
Right.
That kind of fits with Moses.
That's right. They're going to go into the promised land. And they don't need a magician that can manipulate the gods to do something for them. That's the way the pagans dealt with. They had their priest or their magician, and he knew how to work the gods so that they could get from the gods whatever it was they needed. Good fertile crops or children or success in war or whatever they did. And Moses, in a sense, sets himself up in that example. These people were used to that example. That's paganism. That's pagan practices. The pagans, the relationship with their God is altogether different from the Christian faith, the Jewish faith. The pagans had a bargaining relationship with God. I'll give you the virgin for a sacrifice. You give me success in life. So it's a bargain. God says that's not the way it is with me and you. When they get into the promised land, they don't need a magician. They don't need to be looking, as Larry said, they don't need to be looking to Moses. If they're going to have success in conquering the promised land, they need to be looking to God. And this is what he stole. He confused them. So it is a big deal. Yes, sir.
The other thing that I read a commentary was the rock actually represented Jesus.
Yes.
Yes. The striking of it was where Jesus was crucified, and his blood paid for the sins. And then also going to the promised land is like us going to heaven. If we're unbelievers and we don't come to God, we are not going to go to the promised land. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. The New Testament picks up on that. I think it's Peter
Yes,
picks up
yeah,
on the
yeah.
concept of the rock. God makes all kinds of commands of us that just seem unreasonable. And we're in a situation, and it just doesn't seem reasonable to do that. Let me just mention them, and then I gotta close. Oh, I forgot that. One of the commands Jesus says for us is Matthew chapter 5, verse 44, love your enemies. Now, I can amen that right now because I don't see any of you as an enemy. But you put me in a situation where I have an enemy, I mean somebody who is intentionally trying to hurt me. That's a little more difficult to love that person. He says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 39, turn the other cheek. He said, as Christians, we're to be non-retaliating. And that just defies common sense of self-defense and retribution. If someone hurts you, unless you did grow up in a Christian home, if someone hurts you, I imagine you were taught, hurt them back. But the Christian faith says, no, we're not people who retaliate. Now, I'm not saying that you let yourself be destroyed or hurt. You obviously can defend yourself, but retaliation, vengeance, the Bible says that's not our business. That's His business. Well, just put yourself in that situation and see how difficult it is to trust God. The Bible says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18, give thanks in all circumstances. Give thanks in all circumstances. Now, if you want to know something that seems unreasonable, I think that's unreasonable. And I have been in those situations. And you want me to give thanks in this situation? And the Bible says, yes. Yes, ma'am?
Mine is, thank you, God, for getting me through that.
Yes. He doesn't say to be thankful for the situation, but to be thankful in the situation.
You can also be thankful for His correction, if
Yes.
your situation is because of His correction.
Right.
You know, or thankful for the growth that He's going to cause by whatever your situation you're in.
Right. Right. Here's another one of His unreasonable commands. Forgive 70 times 7. Now that sounds okay when you're on number 3, but when you're on number 475, man, really? Really? You want me to forgive again?
The same person?
The same person, yeah. That's Matthew 18, verse 21 to 22. And then James chapter 1, verse 2 through 3. How about this one? Rejoice in suffering. And I think that's what you may be saying, Dana, is it reflects trust in God's redemptive processes.
It also means we're a child of God.
We're a child of God, yes.
We wouldn't be, if we weren't, then we wouldn't be going through that.
Yeah. So, to wrap this up for us. Yes, sir?
Can I say one thing?
Yes, sir.
I watched a video about Erica Tate's confession and giving it up to the Lord, where she forgave the assassin
Yeah,
that killed her husband.
yeah,
And she gave it up. She gave it up to the Lord. And it's like, and the video that I was watching was basically she lifted that out of her heart, saying, I forgive the killer, the assassin of my husband.
right.
So she is not carrying that burden for her or her family
Yeah,
because she gave it up to the Lord. And she knows, because she's a Christian, that the Lord's gonna take care of that guy.
yeah,
I don't need to worry about it anymore. And I believe that when she gave that speech, that she basically, he's coming.
yeah. I heard a reporter, Brad, that was there say in that moment that he said nobody took a breath. It had that kind of weight. I did hear another reporter who wasn't there who said, I don't believe that's true. And I recognize that he would believe that because he doesn't know Jesus Christ. But to summarize it, friends, I hope you have all good situations this week, okay? I do hope you have the wind at your back and the sun in your face. I hope you're riding the crest of the wave, all of those phrases. I do hope that for you. I want good for you, not bad for you. But if bad does come,
Trust.
Lean on God.
yes, trust him.
Trust me.
Because, as Sunshine reminded us, there is a reality we don't see, but he's there.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am?
I
Your
read a
last
thing-
word.
I read a thing this last week that resonates with me, and I keep throwing it at my friend, that God is not through writing our story. We just have to quit taking the pen away from him.
All right. It's me. She throws it at.
It's like, leave the pen in God's
Yeah.
hands.
Let me pray, we'll be dismissed. Our Father, in our heads, we know that you are a God that can be trusted. You were gracious with Moses. You could have wiped him from the face of the earth and had every right to do so. But you showed him grace and forgiveness, and you continued to use him. We know that you're a God that's patient, and you've been so very patient with us.
Yes.
You're a God that provides, and you do so in miraculous ways. We just pray, Father, that those beliefs that are in our head would actually be exercised in our spirit and in our life. Please, Father, help us to be a community of people, a family, a church that trusts you in every situation.
Yes.
It's in Christ's name we pray.